everyone. Welcome to Preemie Chats. Preemie Chats is a program that is for healthcare professionals and parents to talk about what matters most to you and to explore new ideas and to learn together. I'm Leah Whitehead. I'm a proud preemie mom and a former journalist, and I'm happy to be your host today, live here from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Preemie Chats was created and is put on by the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, also well known as CPBF. The foundation is a parent-led charitable organization, and it helps families in and after NICU through education, support, and advocacy. So if you have a heart for preemies, whether you're a family or a healthcare professional, you can check out their website. It's there on the screen, canadianpreemies.org. And there you will find resources, the latest projects, and most importantly, a community of people that want to see our little ones thrive. Today's session is live, so please bring your voice to the table, leave comments and questions in the chat, and we'll try to address them during today's program. It is through rich conversations like what we're going to have here today that we can advance practice and learn together. So please participate and let us know where you're watching from. Today's topic is a very interesting one, and it's one that affects all parents, but is often heightened for NICU families: regulating our feelings. If you have kids in school, you've probably heard about the zones of regulation as part of the school curriculum, certainly here in North America. It's a learning framework that, among other things, promotes emotional awareness. I know my kids have come home with some information on it, and we've always had some great discussions as we look through the material together. So today, we're going to be joined by Emily Walz, who is a content and implementation specialist at the Zones of Regulation. And she's going to introduce us to the Zones of Regulation framework and discuss how the zones can be used with both children and adults at home. Emily Walz is a licensed special education teacher who has taught unique learners and has led social emotional learning initiatives in New York City and the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area for more than 15 years. She is deeply passionate about the impact of high-quality social emotional learning instruction on equity and inclusion in schools. In her role as content and implementation specialist at the Zones of Regulation, Emily provides training, develops resources, and consults with schools, districts, and organizations in the U.S. and abroad. She lives on a sunny corner in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with her husband and 2 children, and we are excited to learn from her today. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Leah, for the opportunity to be here and to talk with your learning community. I want to just start by saying that I am a preemie mom. My first child was born after a very difficult pregnancy at 34 weeks and was in the NICU for just over 2 weeks. And I can say that I am incredibly grateful for his health, but also I deeply can have some understanding of what it means to just have your child enter the world in such a unique way. Right. And kind of the special resilience that it takes to begin your parenting journey as a preemie parent. I am very fortunate that my son has had very typical development. As a special education teacher, I have taught learners who started their lives as preemies in all stages of development, some with more significant impacts and some without. And so I'm just really happy to be able to be in touch with your community.
Thank you for sharing that today. It's always nice to connect with a fellow preemie mom, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it to your presentation now.
Okay. So I want to start by just kind of setting us all into a common understanding of what regulation is. I work for an organization called the Zones of Regulation, and we really specialize on How do we teach and understand regulation in a way that's simple and manageable for kids and the grown-ups who support them? So we start by just understanding, what do we mean when we're talking about regulation? Regulation is the ability to adjust, manage our energy, emotions, and alertness in order to meet our goals, right? So we regulate in order to do tasks that we need to do, in order to be in relationship with each other, in order to take care of our mental health and our overall wellness, and in order to meet our goals for ourselves. At younger ages, we regulate a lot to control our impulses and the behaviors that we have. And regulation skills are developed over a lifetime. So I know all of you know that as our kids are developing these skills, us grown-ups are still working on it, especially when we're going through stressful times. And if I think back to my parenting journey and how my son began life, I would say that there was a lot of regulation involved in managing having a baby in the NICU and what that meant for our family. Okay, I'm just going to move to the next slide here. Okay, so let's talk about the zones of regulation. The zones of regulation is a curriculum, but it's also just a way of thinking about our feelings. And what we like to say is the zones is a simple way for us to think about, talk about, and take care of our feelings. So what we do in the zones is we take all of these emotions, which for many learners are so abstract, and we help to categorize them to make it a little bit more concrete, to be able to think about and notice what these feelings really are. So we start with the blue zone, which is our lowest level of energy. We might be moving slowly. We might be groggy or thinking slowly in the blue zone. We might be feeling sad or sick. These are our down feelings. The next category is our green zone, which is our most neutral state of emotions. So we might just be feeling okay, relaxed. We might be focused in the green zone, feeling pretty calm and regulated. It should be noted that within the zones, we don't say that kids or even grown-ups need to be in the green zone. The green zone feels good, but we can expect to feel all of our feelings. The yellow zone is our more heightened state of energy. So we might be feeling worried, anxious, silly, wiggly, frustrated in the yellow zone, but we still have some control over ourselves. So you might notice in the yellow zone that your heart is beating more quickly, or you're thinking a little bit more rapidly. I myself am in the yellow zone right now because I'm giving a presentation to you all. And our yellow zone often can help us to be motivated and energized to meet our goals. And the last is our red zone. So this is our biggest, strongest feelings. Our red zone can look like losing control. We often have our nervous system is kicking in a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And this is the hardest zone for us to regulate because we have more limited ability to use our higher order thinking. So this might feel like we're mad or angry. We might be devastated or terrified in the red zone. I see Amber is popping in the chat, and she said she was so scared for her baby, or is so scared for her baby. Amber, I'm sure that you are really experiencing the full rainbow of zones right now. And that is normal and it's expected. So when we introduce these 4 zones to our kiddos, and even just to understand them for ourselves as adults, we're really giving a language and giving ourselves permission to feel the full range of feelings. As kids begin to develop emotional language, we can use the zones to help support, especially our kids who have delays with language. Using the color-coded system can help them to build that initial emotional vocabulary in a way that's a little bit more concrete. I would also say that it's really helpful to have the zones as a common language to talk about emotions. Often, often kids who begin life as preemies have a lot of support and caregivers in their lives. So this can look like occupational therapists. Maybe it's PTs. Maybe you have a team of physicians that you're working with different specialties. And having this common language, this is how we talk about feelings at home. This is how we talk about feelings in school. And having this common language between all of the people who support your child can be crucially important to really providing seamless support for your kiddos. Okay, so when we think about the key principles of the zones of regulation methodology, we start by noting that the zones are based on our feelings on the inside, not necessarily our behavior on the outside. So while somebody might look like, oh, wow, I'm going to guess they're in the green zone, on the inside, they might be in the yellow zone, they might be in the red zone, the blue zone. And so we like to teach both grownups and kids that when we're talking about our zones, it's really something that's unique to us, and we are the only ones who are experts on our own feelings. The second one is all the zones are okay. So any of our feelings are okay. We just want to find extra tools and strategies to help us manage or regulate those feelings. The zones helps us regulate toward our goals, not compliance. So the zones is not a model where we're, assigning consequences for kids being in the red zone, or we're giving bonus points for being in other zones. The zones is just really a way for us to notice our feelings and to find healthy ways to take care of them. And in saying that, the emphasis is not on getting back to the green zone. It's just on feeling all of our feelings and finding strategies. And the last is how we teach the zones matters. So this means we're using our culturally responsive knowledge. We're using the knowledge, the deep knowledge that we have of our kids in terms of their language, in terms of their preferences and their strengths and their interests. So throughout the zones of regulation curriculum, we have a series of lessons. We're starting with lessons to understand what our feelings are and how to categorize them into their zones. Later in the curriculum, we begin to explore regulation tools. So what are different ways that I can take care of these feelings that I'm having on the inside? And then we put it all together into what we call a pathway for regulation. So we help to teach kids a sequence that they can follow, and us grownups too can follow in order to take care of these feelings that we're having. So we start by noticing, how do I feel? We can categorize those feelings into our zones. So maybe I'm kind of feeling my heart is fluttering, and I think this is a yellow zone anxious feeling. The next step is to understand, is this a good time for me to regulate? If I'm in the yellow zone and I'm giving a presentation to you all, my yellow zone is going to help keep me energized. If I'm in the yellow zone and I'm at school and I'm about to take a test, I might want to regulate that feeling to help me focus on my goal at hand. So once we decide if it's time to regulate, then we can think about our tools, and our zones help us with that too. So we're going to use different strategies to take care of our blue zone feelings than we might to take care of our red zone feelings. So in understanding the zones, it helps us to understand which tools to use to regulate. We use our strategies and then we reflect. Am I able to move on to the next part of my schedule? Am I able to join the group? And am I able to focus or be in control of myself or just have fun? So this is a way, a method for teaching kids to regulate their feelings that kind of helps to bring it into a developmental sequence to support them. So for those of you who are caregivers at home, you may not grab the curriculum and teach the lessons in the curriculum the same way maybe a teacher would, or a therapist of any type. But there are things that you can do at home that can really help to build this emotional awareness and regulation at home. So the first is you can make your own zones poster. So this can look like taking pictures of your family members in each of the zones. It's especially great for kids who are building their emergent language, to be able to recognize their own face and the faces of the people they see all of the time, experiencing different emotions. And that can be really helpful because as kids are developing language, you can say, how do you feel right now? And instead of verbalizing it, they can use the visual to indicate their feelings as well. So it gives them multiple communication strategies. The second is, as a grown-up, to talk about your own zone. So when you're just really frustrated, you can say, you know what, I'm in the red zone. I need to take a quick break to take care of myself, and then I'm going to come back and deal with this. It's a little easier with our older kids, but as we're modeling it, this really helps to build the emotional skills of your children over time. My two children are now 8 and 10, and my youngest was in kindergarten the year that everyone was home from school. And we worked a lot on regulation skills, and I can say he really built his emotional vocabulary that year because I was just modeling, because we all really needed it. We were in a very stressful time of life, and I know many of you can really resonate with that as you're bringing up your own kids during these complex times. And so in modeling your feelings by saying things like, oh, I'm really feeling upset in the blue zone right now. I think I need to call a friend to take care of my feelings. We're really providing a healthy way that everybody in the family can take care of their wellness. The third is to notice characters' zones. So starting to really notice the feelings that characters in books are having, or if you're watching a movie or a favorite television show, you can pause and say, I wonder how they're feeling right now. Do you think this is a yellow zone feeling? And this really helps to build their emotional awareness as well, and to be able to start to build some empathy skills to notice how other people are feeling. And the last is to think about regulation tools and strategies that you have that you can use right then and there at home. So starting with the ones that are already working. One of my kiddos, his go-to strategy is just to run to his room and to yell into his pillow. He's 10. And that's great. It's a strategy that works for him. Another one of my kids loves to go into the backyard and to run around or hop on the swing. And that movement really helps him to regulate. So starting to notice what are the things that work for the different people in our family. For mom, my regulation tools are a lot different than my kids. And so it's great to have these conversations and to notice how our regulation tools change as kids grow older. Okay, so I think the last thing that I really just want to explain about the zones is that no matter if you are a person who's going to pick up the lessons and teach all of them in the curriculum, or if you're a caregiver and you just need a new way to talk about feelings at home, we have lots of resources to help you get started with that. I know that Leah was going to post our website, zonesofregulation.com. We have free zones posters that you can put up on your refrigerator. We have a coloring sheet for a zones check-in for home that you can hang up. We have a storybook series that helps walk you through the ideas of the zones that you can read with your kids at home as well. So yeah, Leah, that's what I really wanted to explain about the zones, and I'm so excited to take some questions from your community.
Thank you so much. I'm just making sure I put all of your social media links as well in our comments so that people can look you up on social media too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to leave that website up for just a few minutes. And I have a few questions. And I'm going to start with talking about the zones, looking at where you categorized so that all the different colors, and then you had examples underneath. And I noticed, for example, under yellow, it says loss of some control or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of a constant or a fluid in terms of when we're excited? Is there some level of, can we be in complete control in the yellow zone? That's my question.
No, probably not. This is when our energy is a little higher. For a lot of our kids, it looks like them, getting the zoomies and running around a little bit. Maybe they're knocking the milk glass over for the 12th time that day. Maybe they're jumping around. For us grown-ups, we usually feel a lot more of those internal signals, like our heart is fluttering and we might be breathing a little bit more quickly. But this is definitely a higher state of alertness. And we don't necessarily do our most clear thinking in the yellow zone. We can still function perfectly well. There are a lot of people that are kind of, a lot of us default to just running yellow, right? A lot of people default to kind of running blue. And sometimes those are cycles and phases that we have in our life. And so there's no shame in feeling your feelings. We just want to help recognize, especially as we're teaching kids, when is it time to use a regulation tool and when am I just able to meet my goals as is?
Mm-hmm. You were talking about recognizing strategies in your own kids. Are there kind of common strategies that you would find works for most children that people can employ to kind of help their children regulate?
Oh, there are so many. So, at the beginning of kids learning to regulate, we really start with our sensory motor strategies. And kids need a lot of support with these from the beginning, right? So this looks like maybe turning down the lights a little bit, putting on that quiet music. For some kids, it looks like having a weighted blanket. For others, it looks like one of my kiddos is a high revving motor kid. So for him, going on the swing, jumping on a trampoline, working his body a little bit more. So we really want to support kind of to be sort of like detectives to see, let's try this. Does this work for you? For some kids, it's fidgets or noise canceling headphones. These are all ways that we can regulate our feelings. And then as we progress in development, we can think more about communication strategies and really finding the words or the language-based strategies to express how we feel. And then really thinking about thinking strategies and telling myself, you know what, I have to do this for now, but later I can have free time or just get through it. Or, thinking about, is this a big problem or can I let it go for now? So we see our strategies kind of progress as kids grow in their development. This doesn't look the same for every kiddo, especially if you have kids that are starting life at different points and may have multiple, let's say, differences cognitively, physiologically. So we can't expect every kid to develop on the same timeline with this. And what we know is that as kids are emerging in their regulation development, they need us, the grownups, to be really working on co-regulation and helping them to regulate for quite a long time as a way to teach them that they can begin to do it for themselves.
Can you stole the words right out of my mouth, the co-regulation. Can you
Yeah,
kind of define what that is for people who might be watching who are that can be a new term. I know even
absolutely.
in the past 5 years, I'm hearing it more and more than I ever did. And so what
Yeah.
is co-regulation?
So co-regulation is how we support each other in regulating. So for us grown-ups having a baby, our babies need complete co-regulation. So um, they need us to attend to taking care of them pretty much round the clock. And when we're thinking about like emotional regulation, we're really thinking about how can I soothe my child. This is co-regulation. Feeding your child can be co-regulation. It can be a nourishing act. Saying that's okay, or it's okay to be mad right now. And these are all things that we're doing that are co-regulating along with our kiddo. And so co-regulation just means regulating with each other. Um, it's interesting because often they break down regulation into co-regulation and self-regulation. But I think as the language around this is really emerging, we're thinking, all of us co-regulate.
Mhm.
Um, we have our friends that support us. We have our family members, our partners, even our children are help after some time to do some reciprocal regulation with each other and with us. And so helping each other to regulate is just how we operate in community with each other. But certainly as our kids are younger, we're going to have a lot more heavy responsibility to help them with their regulation, to say, let's try this tool right now, or let's stop and notice, how do you feel? What zone are you in? These are all ways that we're co-regulating along with our kiddo. And I'm interested, I see someone in the comment that's talking about reducing anxiety in high-risk pregnancy mothers.
Mhm.
Um, so I can say for myself, I did say that my son was born as a preemie, and I was working in a very stressful job at the time. And so, co-regulation can start when our kids are in the womb. We regulating ourselves helps to regulate our children, whether they're, inside of our bodies, whether they're infants, whether they're teenagers.
Mhm.
And so as we can build our own healthy self-care wellness strategies, it really is going to help our kids to thrive as well.
And do we have to be in the same zone that we are trying to co-regulate our child in? So I'm thinking of being in NICU and having my little one on my chest, and I was in whatever the most stressful zone. I was
Yes,
probably in
you're
the
in the
red.
red zone.
And I remember thinking, and probably the blue zone as well, because I was
Mhm,
very
mhm,
weepy in NICU. And I
yep,
remember thinking like, oh, I hope these emotions don't like translate into who Tessa grew into be. And
mhm.
so you're trying to regulate by having your baby on your chest, which we know skin to skin, there's tons of benefits. But do you have to be in that nice regulated zone in order to co-regulate?
Not necessarily. I think it may be a little bit different. I'm not a physician or an expert on physiology. I think we can all just do the best that we can.
Mhm.
And in what I do know is that the research bears out that as we as we find healthy ways to take care of ourselves as grown-ups, this automatically has a positive impact on our children. That's
Mm.
not to say I have two boys 2 years apart. There's a healthy amount of fighting at my house, even though I work in regulation. And I can say often I will really channel, okay, I am going to use my calm, even voice, even though I am just stewing inside. And so, this is a skill that I've developed over time because I'm a grown up. My kids don't necessarily have that skill yet. But I can say in my calm voice, I'm so frustrated in the red zone with you right now. I'm going to do my best to be patient as I explain this with you, but you should know that I'm very frustrated. And so I can use my calm tone and still own my zone and talk about how this is impacting me. I think it is such a unique experience as, you know, as somebody who has just delivered a baby. I often will ask in my trainings, tell me about a red zone experience that you've had that is not just anger. Because a lot of people are like, red zone is straight to angry, right?
I think we almost associate the red and the anger because that's seeing red phrase that we use.
And of course, the Inside Out movie and the cultural thing, you know, for us in Western culture. But I'll often, it's interesting because I'll always get a few people in the chat who say, giving birth is a red zone experience. It's equal parts elation, terrifying. You know, it is such a full spectrum, red zone into blue, into red, into blue. And that it is what it is. And I think that anybody who is having the experience of being in the NICU with their child has full permission to deeply feel those very particular feelings and to know that things will change over time and you'll find strategies. I know there's a lot of co-regulation that happens from the nurses to the families in the NICU. That was something that was so important for myself and my husband as we had our firstborn. Just having that consistency and that care and help from the wonderful, incredible team in the NICU was something that was completely invaluable in our lives.
We have a question from Sarah. She says, does gradual sleep training really help with self-regulation? How can we help a 5-month-old self-regulate and sleep? Oh, that's $1 million question.
Oh, Sarah, I am not an expert in sleep and regulation. I can say that every single person that I know, every single parent or caregiver that I know has had a completely different sleep experience with their child. And what works for one person does not work for the other person. I wish there was a magic bullet for figuring that out, but I am not the right person to consult with that. And I really wish you the best because that is one of the most challenging parts of that first year is just figuring out how the baby's going to sleep and how you're going to sleep, because how can we regulate without sleep?
That's what I was going to say. I'm sure it contributes in terms of, I know when I'm tired, you feel that emotional scale just kind of increase with.
Absolutely.
I'm someone who needs my sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, maybe in I was reflecting on this the other day with my husband, like, oh, I am way less resilient about not getting a good night's sleep anymore than I used to be. And so that's important to know that part of my wellness and my emotional wellness is making sure that I shut it down at 10:30 at night so that I can be prepared for the next day. Sleep is a crucial strategy for our kids and for ourselves. And it's not an easy one to problem solve.
No. And there's the regression and all of that. When you say that's why I said $1 million question, because sleep is always kind of the battle of those early years with our kids.
Absolutely.
We also have a comment from Robin, who researches in the area of reducing anxiety in high-risk pregnancy mothers. And so Robin said, being prenatally prepared for NICU translates to a more positive experience for mothers, fathers, and infants. Coming in with knowledge and realistic expectations can be held to tempers those red and blue zones emotions.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Robin. I know that since I had a high-risk pregnancy the first time around, we went on a tour of the NICU before, just as part of preparing ourselves. And we certainly we had no preparedness for the when it would happen. That was a complete surprise. But it was really nice to at least understand, okay, this is what it looks like. This is where we would be. I know that's a little bit more difficult with COVID precautions and germ precautions, depending on the season. But even having something like a video virtual tour of the NICU and what it's like, meet the staff, understand what it's going to be like for you to either stay in hospital or to stay at home, and just to really be prepared. And I absolutely agree. I mean, anytime that we can anticipate what's going to happen, it's going to help us regulate through it with much more ease.
I'm going to pop up your website here again. And so who would you recommend use these zones of regulation? Who should be looking this up today?
Oh, everyone. So I can say there's a lot of different ways to use the zones. I think it's a great way to talk to kids about feelings at home. So for parents and caregivers, absolutely. I see, people specializing and physicians specializing in taking good care of pregnant mothers. This is a great way to kind of ease into emotional awareness for grownups as well. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of schools, preschools, elementary or primary age schools, use the zones in more of a curricular fashion to teach new lessons to kids, and just to set up a climate where we're taking care of our regulation at school. A lot of speech and language pathologists and occupational therapists use the zones to work on specific skills, whether they're emergent social skills, emotional awareness, or any sort of sensory processing skills as well. So there are so many ways to use the zones. You just kind of have to find what's going to work for you.
Robin had one more comment here about one of her strategies. So with my almost 13-year-old former NICU baby and only child, I use laughter to help de-escalate her intensifying emotions. If I can make her laugh, it breaks the heat of the moment, helps her to refocus, and allows us to be able to communicate like humans rather than raging bags of adolescent hormones and menopausal anxiety.
Oh, wow, Robin, well said. Can we put that quote on our book? Laughter is a wonderful regulation tool for all of our zones. But yeah, sometimes it's a matter of distracting ourselves. I was reading something the other day about panic attacks and anxiety, and how shocking ourselves by holding a piece of ice can help reset the nervous system. There are all of these things that we can do that really can sometimes interrupt the cycles of how we're feeling, and can help us then to attend to our regulation. And Robin, it sounds like you are A+ co-regulator at your house. It's not easy. And this is something that, both kids and grownups work on for our lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's another thing that we can talk to our kids about. I'm going to work on my regulation. You're going to work on your regulation, and we're going to do the best we can. When we make mistakes, let's talk about it. You know what? I should have stepped away and used a tool. Next time I'm going to try to do that when I'm in the red zone.
I love that. I love you even acknowledging that there's fighting in your house, because it is that. Like I always say, parenting, you just do the best you can. Yeah. Because there's a lot of, we have a saying in our NICU too, that, there's mom guilt is a real thing, but NICU mom guilt is a real thing. Yeah. And so it's kind of just releasing ourselves to go, you do what you can, and to admit to your kids that you're trying. I mean, that must bring freedom to the household as well, of everyone just doing their best.
Yeah, and you have the language to talk about it in a healthy way. That's
Yeah.
not that's not placing blame on you for feeling your feelings, or on them for potentially making you feel your feelings. But you have the language to say, can you tell what zone I was in? Yeah, I was in the red zone. I wish I would have done something differently. This is something that I'm learning too.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect spot, I think, to wrap up today. It's certainly been great for me to hear and to learn about the zones of regulation, and really helpful, I think, for this community, just to, as we enter parenthood and are on different stages of that journey, just to recognize that there are these tools that can help us. And like you said, bring words into how we're feeling so that we can have healthier relationships in our households and schools and out there in the world.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate the conversation with your community, and look forward to seeing if there are more comments after the event. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Preemie Chats. A special thank you to our sponsor, AstraZeneca, for their ongoing support of the educational program. And just a reminder that if you missed part of today's session, or if you'd like to rewatch any of it, then again, you can head on over to the website, canadianpreemies.org, and there you'll find this edition and all previous editions of Preemie Chats. And you'll also find many resources and support available there. You'll be reminded as well that CPBF is a charitable organization, and that it depends on support to continue its important work. Consider how you can support CBBF and its journey to empower families of premature babies in every step of their journey. Together, we can create a brighter future for all preemies and their families. And join us here next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as we talk with Dr. Michael Narvey about miracle babies, getting parents and healthcare teams on the same page. Have a great weekend, everyone.